As you can see, I am on the street tires. I've got this little cut over here in my new neighborhood area that I've been wanting to bring this thing out here on the street tires and see how rowdy she can get. I guess we'll see what this thing's actually capable of on these little... Jeez. That was my fault. This thing's geared really low with these small tires, and man, it's finicky. So weird. You guys.
I was so excited to bring this thing out on the street finally, on the street tires, but as you saw in that footage, couldn't do it. I had no power. If I had to guess, I was maybe pushing like 80 horsepower. So I'm not getting any boost, and it will not even rev up. It won't even rev with low boost. You can hear in that footage, when it does hit that point where it starts to break up, it sounds to me like a twin. For that reason alone, I am inclined to believe that I may have blown up the factory coils in this thing. So I went ahead and I ordered some performance coils. They are supposed to be here tomorrow. Before we get into diagnosing and looking at the ignition system, the first thing that we always want to check is fuel. All right, so it's pretty smooth down here at the lower RPM. That's about 3,500 RPM. The boost pressure is this green line here. That's my boost PSI. TPS is the red, and then we have fuel flow. I was just measuring the fuel flow to make sure that fuel was flowing. What's interesting down here is this is the AFR. And this is why I don't believe that it is a fueling problem. I believe it's either a coil or some type of electrical problem. So just as we're touching about 10 pounds of boost, it really starts to break up bad. And you can see here, I'm fully on the throttle. I'm at 100.2% TPS right here. So the engine should take off like a rocket. This RPM should shoot straight up. The interesting thing here is the AFR never changes at all. I'm at 12.1 AFR. I can't get any more than 9 pounds of boost in it when this is happening. You can see the fuel flow is also going diggy. So we've got fuel coming in and out because the engine doesn't know what to do. And maximum RPM that I was able to achieve just constantly staying on the throttle was only about 67, it looks like, before I even gave up on that run. Okay, so to run this test with the fuel injectors to see how each individual fuel injector is performing, this was just a previous run that was done with quite a bit of boost, 26 pounds of boost, and this was at 7,500 RPM. So this is a pretty intense run. So this is showing a pulse width on the injector of about 17 milliseconds pulse width. Because it's at 100% duty cycle, that's basically the maximum amount of time that I can keep that injector open is for 17 milliseconds. Rather than doing complicated math, I just kind of reverse engineered this and said, okay, so if I know I need 17 milliseconds of open time, I'm just giving it slightly more interval to recover. So I'm doing a 20 millisecond interval. So basically the injector is going to be running at maximum tilt. Now I am going to time this. I'm not sure exactly what the time is going to be, but I'm just going to run my timer. Maybe 5 seconds. Okay, I ran both. I hit both exactly at the same time, so that is exactly how long we ran that injector. All right, so this is injector A. I'm going to mark it right there. So we'll go ahead, now that I've got it marked, we'll dump this one out, we'll reset it for injector B. Fire up our fuel pump. Man, I'm good. Check this out. I mean, it's right there. All right, we got one last injector. Once again, we're right there. So in conclusion, we are firing very close to the correct amount of fuel. So each injector is performing adequately. So I just pulled a coil out and I pulled one of the plugs out just to check the gap because it's been a while since I've set gap on these things. And I've got these gapped to way too high. These are right at 30 thousandths, which for the amount of boost that I'm running is actually quite a big gap and a lot to ask on these stock coils. I'm gonna go right down to 18. And the reason I'm doing that is to see if any of the conditions improve. I'll put the fuel injectors back in. I'm going to reset the gap on all plugs to this 18 thou instead of 30 thou. And then I'm going to run it and see if it'll actually boost up. After checking the data logs, I was able to hit between 17 and 19 PSI on that last run, but it is still breaking up. I'm still of the opinion it just sounds like a bad coil. That leads me to our solution. This is an R35 coil. This one is a Hitachi. It is part number IGC 0079. The reason I'm choosing to use the R35 coils is these do have a reputation for builders and performance guys for being some of the most stout coil on-plug design that you can put into your race car. So I got our two coils side by side. They're very similar in terms of height, size. They're almost the same height. I've got a pin out here for an R35 coil, left side, then we have ground, then we have signal. So it's wired the same way from Mitsubishi as it is from Nissan. And actually, a little fun fact, this coil ought to have about 4 to 5 times as much energy available as these stock coils, which is just about, well, actually, it is the highest output of any coil on-plug design by any manufacturer. The next step up from this would be something like a capacitor discharge system, you know, true racing stuff beyond this. All right, so we got signal on the right side, we got ground in the middle, and we got juice 12 volt on the far left. All right. Actually, this is a hotter plug than what I've got in the engine. So we'll run the Mitsubishi on cylinder C. All right, so we got our two little test setups here. The R35 coil being this one here, the standard Mitsubishi being this one here. So let's check the Mitsubishi first. We're gonna give it the same dwell time as the software, which is a 3.6 millisecond dwell time. There we go. Okay, so that's our Mitsubishi coil. All right, let's fire our R35 coil. Now this one is visible from all the way back here. Now I've got both coils set next to one another. I'm going to fire them in sequence. So there really is no discernible difference. This guy is just a custom spark plug with the strap removed. First, I'm going to try it as is and see how far the spark will jump. So we're getting a jump. It's pretty weak. Let's turn up the RPM. So we'll just swap plugs here to see how that looks from our R35 coil. All right, let's see how that one looks. Let's turn this one up. Yeah, that's still a bright blue. Now I'm seeing a big difference. I don't know, that one seems a lot stronger. Next experiment. You can see I've got my highly modified spark jumper. So we're going to see if this Mitsubishi coil has enough energy to jump that gap. Well, I hear it, but I can't see it. Oh, it's on your side of the camera. Actually did a fairly good job. All right, let's see how our R35 coil likes this up. Got a good clean pop. Let's crank up the speed. This one just seems stronger to me. Okay, so in this experiment, we're no longer using the body of the spark plug as our ground. We're just going to use a grounding wire, and in theory, the one that produces more spark energy should be able to jump the gap better. Okay, so we are at 0.8 inches. See if it'll jump at 0.8. Okay, it'll do 0.8. Let's see if we can jump a 1.2 inch gap. Okay, so we're just starting to misfire. Let me try it with a slightly higher dwell time. I'm going to turn the dwell up to 5 milliseconds. Okay, I'm going to turn it back down to 4 milliseconds. So at about 4 milliseconds dwell time, we're just barely able to jump this 1.2 inch gap. I think we're right on the limit of what this coil can handle. Let's see if we can get any of these to jump to 1.5. There was one. All right, so we're right at the limit now. If I use 5 milliseconds dwell time, we might be able to jump it. So I'm going to try 5 milliseconds. Yeah. Okay, so we have a better likelihood of jumping it at 5 milliseconds. So that's where the limit of this stock coil is anyway. Let's swap this out for our R35. There we are, 1.5. Let's see if our R35 coil can jump the gap. All right, I'm back on 4 milliseconds dwell time. Whoa. Okay, so every now and then we'll misfire on this one. So I'm going to test this one at 5 milliseconds. At 3 milliseconds charge time, we're not able to jump, but at 4 milliseconds we are. Ooh, okay. So 20, we got 20 strikes in a row before we lost one spark. I'm gonna go back to the Mitsubishi coil for a minute. Even with a 5 millisecond dwell time, now when I did 5 milliseconds on the R35 coil, I don't think we have a single misfire. We're still having misfires with the Mitsubishi coil. So let me try a 6 millisecond. Okay, so we found the limits of this stock coil. Even with 6 milliseconds, we're only able to get a strike every 3 to 4 fires. Now, just for kicks, I'm gonna leave this set to 6 milliseconds charge time, dwell time. Actually, we're gonna kick this thing up to what would be equivalent to 6,000 RPM and see what happens. I'm going to turn this back down to 4 milliseconds because that's usually about where my dwell time stays. All right, let's check that out with the lights off. Okay, so this is Mitsubishi coil, 6,000 RPM, 1.5 inch gap with a 4 millisecond dwell. I should be seeing far more sparky than that. One last experiment using the R35 in the same manner with the lights off at high RPM. So this is 1.5 inch gap, 4 milliseconds at 6,000 RPM. Oh yeah. Okay, so when we start pushing these things to the limit, that's the big difference. Check that out. That is a lot of power for a coil on plug. That is a ton of power, man. Wow. I'm going to turn this up to 5 millisecond, and we probably will not get a single misfire with a 5 millisecond dwell. That's freaking impressive. So even though I don't have the proper equipment to really show the discharge energy of one coil compared to the next, I think I've been able to definitively show with this crude experiment here that our R35 coil is producing significantly more power because it's able to jump a significantly larger gap and do so with much better consistency than the Mitsubishi coil. So that's enough evidence for me to go ahead and put the better coils in the machine. So we're all hooked up. Let's see if this thing runs. Prepare to roast me in the comments. Here's the thing about the spark plugs, guys. Obviously, I've been doing this stuff since I was 7 or 8 years old. And I can honestly tell you that in My entire life, I've never had a spark plug just sporadically fail. Not a brand new spark plug, not a brand new high quality iridium spark plug fail after one run. And yet they failed after putting 30 plus pounds of boost through the engine. Interesting. Hey guys, welcome back to the video. So I've been waiting about a week to get my new spark plugs in. It's very hard to find spark plugs as cold as I need them, but apparently when you get to this level of boost, we're talking 30s, 35s, 40s plus, you really gotta have a very cold plug. I had some cold plugs in there, and you guys saw I cooked those plugs. That was the source of the problem. So I wasn't able to find plugs from any other manufacturer in a cold enough range to fit this engine. So what I did end up with is the Denso IKH27s, or plug number 5347. That's what I'm using. So now that we've got very cold plugs, these are equivalent to, I think, a heat range 6.
The thing with heat range is different manufacturers use different scales. So a 9 on an NGK is going to be the same as a Denso 27 heat range. Then if you want to take a look at the Champion plugs, you can see, well, Champions are just a recipe for frustration.
Amazon waited until 7 p.m. to deliver my plugs just in time for the rainstorms. Yay. I'm going to install these plugs. We're going anyway. Whatever happens, happens.